Chapter 4. The Assault. Nadia's room, Monster Hall, 15:30. Nadia buried her face in her pillow. She wasn't crying. Crying made you weak. She felt cheated. She didn't get to show off her high jump. She could have easily made 6 meters, maybe 7. All because someone was shot. SBP rushed President Putin out of the stadium, believing it was an assassination attempt. A member of his service leapt in front of President Putin and took a bullet in the back. Coach Sidorov and the doctors escorted him to the medical wing for treatment. It was Borodin who fired the shot at President Putin. From under Grigory's arm, Nadia saw Borodin pull out his firearm, raise it towards the bleachers, and pull the trigger once before flinging it from his hand. He fell to his knees as SBP surrounded him. Nadia remembered that it all looked wrong. Borodin's movements looked hesitant and restrained, as if he wasn't sure about what he was doing. Military police cuffed him and escorted him to lockup. All the while he shouted, "Mind control! One of those monsters must have forced me to discharge my weapon." Everyone evacuated the stadium. Dr. Molosov canceled the rest of the demonstration and demanded that the monsters return to the lab for testing. He worried that there might be some mutations from genetic therapy that made them more difficult to control. "None of us have mind control," Rodion thought aloud as they lined up against Dr. Molosov's examination table. "I wish I was paying more attention. I wasn't alert until the gun went off." Dr. Molosov slapped him across the face. "You should always be alert. What were you thinking about?" Rodion rubbed his cheek. The others stood at attention, not wanting any of Dr. Molosov's wrath. "I was just thinking." "You're not supposed to think." He pulled a pen-like switch out of his pocket. "You're supposed to protect the president." He pressed the button on the top of the device, and an electrical current spread throughout each monster's body. They collapsed onto the white tile and convulsed until he took his thumb off the switch. "You're lucky that President Putin was impressed with your abilities," said Dr. Molosov. "Otherwise, I would terminate each one of you right now. You have something to add, Grigory?" Grigory opened his mouth to reply, but thought better of it, electing to tighten his lips till his mouth was nothing but a slit. "I want you all to think about your role in this organization and compile a list of what you could have done better. Rodion, get your head out of the clouds and do your job." Dr. Molosov stormed out of the lab, completely forgetting that it was he that ordered them all there in the first place. Dr. Markov sighed as she and Coach Sidorov, who accompanied the doctors to the lab, lifted the monsters to their feet. Immediately after, Dr. Markov pulled out several syringes for their blood tests. "Will you really be able to determine if they have any secret abilities?" Coach looked at the instruments Dr. Markov placed on the table. She smiled. "Elementary. There is a genetic marker for everything, including mind control. None of them have that, though. It's incredibly unethical." Coach Sidorov grimaced. Is, any of this ethical?" "It was a joke, Sidorov." Dr. Markov's smile faded. "Rodion, all of you, your mission is to serve the Russian people. That means protecting your president at all costs. Your education should have prepared you for this very situation. Rodion, tell me, what were you thinking about?" "Existence? Why am I here? Why was I made? Is it really just to protect Russia and President Putin? Is that all I am?" Dr. Markov rolled her eyes again. "Yes. Your existence is to protect and serve. You all failed today." "That can't be all. There is more to it, right?" His eyes penetrated deep into hers, and she had to look away. There was fury there, a deep longing for a purpose of self. She couldn't give him that. "Life is meaningless. You are born. You die. In the middle, you—" She tried to determine the best words. What she wanted to say was that you choose what you do in the middle, but that wasn't true. Not for them. They simply did what they were told. "We're tools." Grigory smirked as he fiddled with the instruments on the table. "We have no other purpose except towards Mother Russia. Isn't that enough for you, brother?" Rodion lunged at him, but Coach grabbed his arm firmly. It was out of character for Rodion to react to anything. "Now hold on, Grigory," started Coach Sidorov, but Dr. Markov stopped him. "No, he's right. That is their purpose. They are no more than that. Each of you remembers your role. Nadia, you especially have a role to play in the upcoming years. Infiltrate Fort Wichman and take their technology." Nadia nodded, but she was having a hard time understanding. She'd never seen herself as a tool or anything like that. She just saw herself as Nadia, or Slenderfoot when she was in her monster form. Was there more than that? Was there more than Schwanwich? She'd never really thought about it. She would be going somewhere brand new in a couple of years, and she never really thought about it. Coach put his hands on his hips, incredulity all over his face, as if he were looking at an incorrigible child. "They are not just tools. They're human beings with more to offer than selfless service. Are you trying to confuse them? Your role here, Coach Sidorov, is physical education only. You don't need to worry about their well-being outside of that." "Mom and Dad are fighting," Lucas smirked. They both turned their attention to him, daring him to say another word. He laughed to himself and said no more. "Dr. Markov, don't we already have the best technology?" Ilian interrupted, as if he'd not noticed anything since they were shocked. "Russia is #1 in tech and infrastructure, or so we're told." Dr. Markov pursed her lips. Their conditioning worked better than she gave it credit, at least in some areas. She cleared her throat. "It's good for us to know what the Americans are working on so we can best counter it. That is why Nadia will be sent to Fort Wichman." "Why can't we all go? I want to fight the arrogant Americans." Luca pounded his fist into his hand. "We could all be of assistance." Grigory's lips curled into a mischievous grin. "This is exhausting," said Dr. Markov. "Go to your rooms and don't come out until dinner." So Nadia laid on her bed and glanced at her alarm clock every now and again, wishing time would move faster. She rolled over onto her back and stretched. Out of the corner of her eye, she spotted her favorite book, a children's alphabet book with different animals. She turned to page 1. A is for ape. There was a picture of a dancing chimpanzee with a big smile on his face. It often made Nadia smile when she saw it. Underneath it, on the white background of the page, she had taken a blue pen and drawn a picture of Ilian. Nadia wasn't the best artist. Her style was reminiscent of a 6-year-old drawing their first family portrait. It wasn't exactly a stick figure, but it wasn't very detailed either. On the second page was B is for bat. On a white background, there was a brown bat flapping its wings, and underneath in the margins was her drawing of Rodion. She smiled as she looked at his face. She had drawn him deep in thought. He always looked dopey when he was thinking. She let out a giggle as she thought of it. The next page was C is for cat. She had added a fish at the end of it. The picture was of an adult cat swatting at something. She drew Luca with his fists up, ready to fight the cat in mortal combat. She liked that drawing the most. She laughed and hugged her book. She flipped pages till she was near the back. S is for spider. A common garden spider hung from a thread of silk. Below, she had drawn Grigory at a desk, several arms coming out of his back doing different things. One rested on the desk, another wrote on a piece of paper, another was scratching his head, and 2 others were holding on to some webs that went off the page. It reminded her of a special class they had last year titled Military Tactics. School for the Monsters had consisted of several teachers flown in from Moscow on yearly contracts. Many were renowned university professors, or so they claimed. Nadia didn't know the difference. They taught mathematics, technology, science, languages, and history. But there were other teachers who arrived and taught them martial arts, sociology, psychology, and military tactics. In particular, sabotage and espionage. Captain Simonov, a retired GRU officer, spent an entire 8 weeks teaching them about espionage best practices. He taught them the history of Russian intelligence. Their classroom was set up with 6 desks and chairs. Nadia, Ilian, and Rodion sat at the 3 front desks. while Luca and Grigory sat in the back. The latter two liked to play pranks on the teachers, but Captain Semenov was a teacher who was not easily pranked. One day he walked into the classroom after lunch to find his bag webbed up on the ceiling. It was a funny prank. Nadia had a hard time not laughing when she walked into the room, but Captain Semenov had not been fooled and confronted Grigory upon entering the classroom.
Sabotage, Grigory, is not easy. If you want to get away with it, follow these rules. 1. Always have a patsy. You can't escape unharmed without one. 2. Do not use methods that can only be traced back to you.
Captain Semenov pointed up to his briefcase.
You need to think outside the box.
He patted him on the head. Grigory scowled at the patronization, though he also seemed to take it to heart. It was the one and only time that he pranked Captain Semenov.
3. This isn't really a rule, but it needs to be said. Humility, even false humility, can get you out of trouble. Though perhaps if you can feign incompetence, that might work. But humility can be passed off as an accident. Simply spin it as if you didn't realize the consequences of your actions. It's not foolproof, but it has saved my ass from further investigations.
There was a knock on Nadia's door and a familiar voice behind it.
Miss Nadia, can I come in?
Though he sounded familiar, she couldn't place where she'd heard his voice before. Was he one of the soldiers they were competing with in the stadium? She was going to laugh at him and tell him what sorry losers they all were. She smiled as she opened the door. It was Mikhailov from the demonstration. "Well, hello, loser! What are you—" She didn't get to finish her sentence because the loser pushed his way in and pressed her against the wall, squeezing her left breast and trying to stick his tongue down her throat. She used the wall as support and placed her feet into his waist and kicked him across the room into her dresser. He groaned in pain from the impact. Music to her ears. "What do you think you're doing?" She felt the heat turn up on her face and tears well up on her cheeks. He just kissed her. Assaulted her? In her confusion, she didn't see him pull out a pen-like switch from his pocket. Before she could react, he pressed the button on the tip, sending electric pulses throughout her body. She fell onto the floor and twitched upon his approach, her mind almost as paralyzed as the rest of her body. She couldn't even wiggle her big toe.
I heard you like it rough.
He picked her up and threw her onto the bed. She bounced on the springs, and the seizing sensation waned. She willed her body to move, but the best she could do was twitch. She watched as he undressed himself.
I think you're going to enjoy this.
He smirked as he approached the bed. She shook with all her might. The feeling in her limbs re-emerged, but it was slow. She tried to scream, even though she thought screaming was for babies. But all she could manage was a mangled gasp. There was no need to scream. Rodion, in his bat form, crawled through the doorway on all fours, shrieking. Mikhailov turned around just in time to have his head chopped clean off his shoulders from one swipe of Rodion's claws.